This is Zachlog the Great, and I am here tonight with my friend Travis.
Hello.
And a tired but still in attendance Nate. And we are getting together tonight to talk about Thomas Hardy's poem, The Man He Killed. Travis has volunteered to read it for us tonight. Before we get to that, couple of things. One, if you like my work, if you would like to support my channel, you can go to subscribestar.com/Zachlog-the-great and support me there. Also, you may be interested to know I recently wrote a book, a novel, I think it's a novella if you want to get really picky, and I am publishing it on a blog, and you can check that out at zachlog.wordpress.com. It is titled The Mayor of Christ Mountain. And you might enjoy that as well. So, having said that, like I said, Travis has volunteered to read the poem for us tonight. So I'm going to get that up on the screen. Hopefully I'm going to remember to take it back off of the screen when we are done. And you guys let me know when you see it.
Yep, it's there.
There it is.
Okay, go for it.
The Man He Killed by Thomas Hardy. Had he and I but met by some old ancient inn, we should have sat us down to wet right many a nipperkin. But ranged as infantry and staring face to face, I shot at him as he at me, and killed him in his place. I shot him dead because he was my foe. Just so, my foe, of course he was. That's clear enough, although he thought he'd list perhaps offhand like, just as I was out of work, had sold his traps, no other reason why. Yes, quaint and curious war is. You shoot a fellow down, you'd treat if met. You shoot a fellow down, you'd treat if met where any bar is, or help to half a crown.
Okay. All right, and okay, Nate. So, would you like to start us off your first thoughts about the poem tonight?
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of the way it goes, you know? That a lot of times the people that are going to be fighting the wars probably live a pretty similar life to the guy that they're killing on the other side of the war. I mean, whether you're looking at, conscript infantry in World War One, hoplites in the Hellenic city-states, all these sort of, like Mesopotamian fighters, the various, the various wars of the inter-Chinese conflicts. Just in general, a lot of times the guys that, are standing there slaying each other aren't so different. They're probably gonna, if they sat down and, if they're, again, like it says, if they're meeting anywhere else, crops ain't great this year, the dirt's really dirty, the horse smells like a horse, sometimes my wife acts like a horse, it's ridiculous. And they'd be like, oh, I know, man, geez. And then they go put on their, grab up their different shield with a different symbol on it, and they're like, well, time to stab each other. And that's just how it goes. It's the nature of the beast. Unless you're a Mongol, because they're apparently exceptional, because they're pretty different from just about anybody.
And also, up until the early 20th century, like, just basically the only thing to do with them was keep them from, like, joining forces together, because, like, most of the people around them could deal with, like, a couple of disparate tribes occasionally harassing them. But if you got one leader who could, like, pull together huge masses of them, suddenly you have a very, very big problem, which then, fortunately for everyone around them, did not happen very often. Yeah, and so a little bit of a I had to look this one up. So a little bit of a vocabulary lesson. Nipperkin, or actually, you know what? I should double check that because now I have a general sense. Okay, so it's basically a pint, is what he's saying.
Okay.
I don't think it's the same measurement, but he's like, yeah, we'd have put away a few pints, is basically what he's saying. And yeah, it is a strange thing, and you know, if like the standard, like the standard Christian position is that like there is such a thing as a just war. You know, there are Christian groups who are pacifist, but that's not the mainstream opinion. But at the same time, like that should be a very limited set of circumstances. And like, you know, you should, you know, try pretty much anything else first, you know, before you get to that, because you end up in some pretty horrible circumstances. You have, you know, people doing things that under almost any other circumstance you shouldn't want them doing. So, and that's going to leave marks for another thing. How about you, Travis?
So, I mean, I thought it interesting. I recently read a book called Citizen Soldiers by Stephen Ambrose. Basically about World War II, from the time they were on the Normandy beaches until the end of the war, followed the Allied forces, Americans in particular. And I know one of the things, you know, they said was, you know, it was at Christmas, you know, the Americans would be singing Silent Night in English, and the Germans just across the way would be singing it in German. And that, you know, they were close enough, and they're kind of sharing this moment. And there, you know, there was kind of a lull for a lot of them at some point, but then, you know, only a little bit later they were back again, you know, trying to blow each other up.
Was that World War I or World War II?
That's World War II. World War II.
Okay.
So the book follows from Normandy through to the end of the war.
That would have probably been around Bastogne in the Battle of the Bulge.
Yes, that's
one of the few times the lines stayed close enough during that time.
Yeah, because that was one thing. Because like it was, I don't have a I don't have a very strong knowledge of either, but like I was under the impression that it was, definitely much more World War I, where there were lines of enemy soldiers relatively close to one another. But I guess it's a circumstance that that showed up in in other isolated instances in World War II.
And I could have misread it too. I mean, it came across that way, but it could have been saying that. I don't know, because they did interviews with German soldiers.
If it's Americans and Germans, then yeah, probably World War II. Well, especially if they're talking about the D-Day landings.
Yeah, it was World War II. I may just be incorrect about the fact that they were close enough to be singing it together, I guess is what I'm saying. But that was the impression I had when I was reading it.
And there was also a pretty well-known instance in World War I, the Christmas Truce, and I guess it must have been relatively early in the war, and basically the two sides kind of spontaneously, soldiers on the two sides, on Christmas Day, kind of spontaneously decided, you know, we should, we should celebrate together. Let's stop shooting at each other. And basically just came together as men, as Christian brothers for, a matter of several hours. Which, again, if I understand correctly, kind of panicked, higher up. Is like, this isn't supposed to happen. If this kind of thing keeps, this kind of thing keeps happening, we might have to call this whole thing off. And it's like, well, yes, that would be terrible, because not having millions of men kill each other because a bunch of treaties that don't make sense. Why would we can't have that stopping? I don't know if I suspect Nate may be familiar with it. I don't know if Travis is, but there's actually Sabaton, the band, has a song about the Christmas Truce, which is really fantastic and kind of touching song. So but yeah, and it's another thing, and again, this is someone who's hardly a historian, but I have heard that, like, after the war, the English and American soldiers were like talked on relatively friendly terms about the Germans, but it was the Japanese, like American soldiers who were in the Pacific theater, just absolutely hated the Japanese, like, personally. It's not like propaganda kind of thing. It's like, yeah, they're I would be oh, we nuked them twice, sounds great, kind of thing.
Well,
so
my understanding is that the Japanese were just pretty vicious and unrelenting, and that's a large part of the reason.
Yes,
they were murderous is the problem. Like, a vicious and difficult combatant is one thing, but someone who's going to behead prisoners and who's going to booby trap corpses and who's going to do all these things just to kill you, or like I said, they're going to kill you out of spite after you've surrendered in honorable combat. We treated our prisoners well. They treated their prisoners like tatami mats and chopped them up. It's a whole different game. Like, you'll have a guy, like a wounded guy, will be like, oh, and he'll call for help because he's got an unsprung grenade laying under him. And when you flip him over, he just throws it up in the air and kills the medic and a couple other guys, just because he wants his last act to be bloodshed against the enemy. So that kind of thing is what makes, sort of breeds hatred.
Yeah, but what was let me take a look at what we got here.
And I think that is something that came up in that book too when I was reading it, was, both Germans and Americans speaking admirably of their opponents fighting, like they were good fighters. So, I mean, there's, they might meet up after the war, and have a beer at this ancient inn, just by chance, and be able to, knock back a couple of pints about being on the opposite side of the same war, even.
I mean, the average Wehrmacht soldier and the average, doughboy was going to be, like I said, they were going to have a lot in common. They were probably working, some kind of blue collar job before the war started. Everything kind of just went crazy. And now, they're swinging lead at each other. And it's like, okay. Like I said, they fought, it's like, if we're fighting, we're fighting. But if you're wounded or you surrender, it's good.
Right.
We're not gonna, yeah. For the most, America at least isn't gonna torture you. The Germans,
Yeah, it,
Depends on how, let's say, ethnic you look.
right. And I think the other thing is, this is about, a stranger that you would meet at an inn and have something in common with. But, our Civil War, I mean, they were literally neighbors and even family, going to war against each other.
I had a compendium of Civil War oral histories, like just, fables from the Civil War almost. And like sort of like, journal entries and things like that. And they had an account from one guy. He said they had a man, his name was Driscoll. And he said Driscoll was the finest rifle shot in the company. They're like, if you need somebody taken care of, go get Driscoll. And he'd put him down. When he said they were assaulting a Confederate position. Driscoll was in a Union rifle company. They're assaulting this Confederate position, and like they would get close and they'd be ready to push on it, but there was this young cavalry officer that kept charging out and raking their flanks, and they'd force them back. And so after he's done that 2 or 3 times, they're like, "Oh my God, Driscoll, come here!" They're like, "Okay, we're going to be assaulting, and when that goddamn cavalry captain comes charging out again, shoot him dead." They're like, "Yes, sir." So they're pushing up, they're watching, here he comes. Well, they said Driscoll shoulders his rifle and bah! That officer goes flying, goes dropping off his horse like a sack of wet grass. He's dead. Done. He hit the ground with his eyes open and his heart still. And I said, so they're pushing up toward a position. They said they get over there. And I said Driscoll walks over to him and just flips him over with his foot. And they said the guy goes white as a sheet and then just dives into the Confederate lines, swinging his rifle with both hands. And they said they found him shot like to doll rags and dead. And what they realized was that he had a son that they didn't know about who was a Confederate, and he just killed him. So unknowingly shot his own son down in combat. So they found a picture of him in, like amongst his effects. And I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
So, among other things, be sure to pass your, as possible, to pass your, beliefs on to your kid, so that in a political ideological conflict, they don't end up on the other side.
Well, and I think that's why I find Lee an interesting character in that war. He never really wanted to fight for the South, but went because of familial and regional loyalties, as I understand it.
Yeah, like I said, he was not going to fight against the place where all his family and his, culture is from. And so he went to war with a heavy heart but an iron hand, and the rest is history.
Well, yeah, and it's I mean, like I said, earlier, Christianity does not say like there's no such thing as just war, but you should be darn careful. But like people are invading, attacking your homeland, trying to basically reduce your people to subjugation. That's kind of what you have to do. Like that's one of the things where okay, I guess it's time to do this, and it's and also something that C.S. Lewis said, don't know where, but like he said, logically, if there is such a thing as a just war, there is also such a thing as an unjust peace. And if your peacefully accepting, certain kinds of things happening, that can be wickedness in and of itself. It is, what crosses that line when it's time to, flip that switch is a difficult question, especially, if you're in circumstances where it's not, where you're not, it's not a, you know, give me a second. Think, trying to choose careful terms where it's not a, just and, reasonably decent government, calling you to this. Um, you know, it's kind of a strange thing for me, over the past few years, because, not that long ago, like, okay, pick a particular instance. I think it was Iowa. I think it was Iowa where this happened, last year, late last year, in the Iowa state capitol. There was a, satanic shrine, like, erected with a statue of Satan or Baphomet or whatever. Um, and this guy whose name I don't, what, I should find it because the guy deserves credit. Uh, 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 Sorry, one moment. Not, is it Mississippi? No, it was not Mississippi. Iowa. Yeah, it is Iowa. Michael Cassidy. Michael Cassidy goes into the Iowa state capitol, wrecks this shrine, topples the statue, rips the head off, and throws the head in the trash. Um, by our current laws, what he did was illegal. Um, but and not just a matter of a few years ago, I would have been like I understand what he's doing, but probably I probably would have said that wasn't the right thing to do. We live in a country of laws and such and such. And then, but then, like, you look at things happen over the past several years. You look at people who have people of the favored political alignment. There's a good way to say it. People of favored political alignment, doing fairly similar things, and you having no consequences. I'm like, well, okay, I guess that's where we are now. I guess it's just time to start doing these things. Um, and he's going to be prosecuted.
Should have been doing these things anyway.
Yeah,
evil and the trappings of evil, the symbols of evil, all need to be destroyed.
Yeah, it's just
if the law's on the side of evil, then it is an evil law, and it has no purpose other than to enforce evil. So no.
Yeah, and but like I said, just a few years ago, I would have been rather more likely to say like, look, we live in a country of laws. We need to talk these things out, and we need to act that way. But like, that's all kind of being thrown out. So okay, it's gonna cost him something, because he's not politically favored, and he's not of the group who's allowed to wreck statues and do all kinds of other things without consequence. But I guess that's just where we are now.
Well, that's what makes his act courageous. One man doing the right thing, even though it costs him, versus a mob of people feigning outrage to do the things they just want to do. Yeah. That's the difference between, courage and mob cowardice.
Yeah, and also it's like it feels a little bit like, a minor act of war. And it's like, and it's kind of been like, it's at the same time, it feels like it's, that's been going on for a while, but it's been all one direction. So, okay, well, I guess it's heading both ways now. We'll see how this turns out.
So to get back
I will
to the
say,
poem,
yes, that too.
yeah, just to get back to the poem, talking about small acts of war. I mean, in the end, one rifleman shooting dead one rifleman is sort of the smallest act of war. But what interests me about it is that he sounds like a note of like sadness about it. Like, it's like almost regretful, like, but there's like not any remorse in it. It's like, it's too bad about that guy, maybe in a different time and place we'd have been homeboys, but there's no like, I can't believe I took his life. I feel so dirty. There's none of this like soppy modern, whining about it. He's like, kind of sucks. I don't like that I had to do that, but it's done. I mean, there is, the clearest kill or be killed moment. We shot at each other. We exchanged rounds, just mine found its mark and his didn't. And so, man, I wonder what he was like, but that is, he's not acting like it's this thing that is like just stained him forever. It's like I said, it's like a regretful reflection on something that he had to do. But having done his duty, he's gone on and lived his life since.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're gonna stay sane, that's kind of, if you're gonna stay sane on both sides, that's kind of the attitude you have to take. If you're gonna stay sane by not ripping yourself apart in guilt, you have to take that kind of attitude. On the other hand, if you're going to stay sane by not, just more or less reveling in, bloodthirstiness, you also have to, take that kind of attitude. It's like, you're he's also not like, woohoo, that was fun, I want to kill more people. And so it's, finding a way through that, finding a way to understand that is, I guess, one way you could term that.
Well, and I find in the last stanza his use of the word quaint. I find that interesting. Yes, quaint and curious war is. Quaint isn't a word I would typically give to war, I don't think. And it's, and then he says you shoot a fella down, you treat, at a bar. So it's like he's saying, it's almost like he's saying the quaint part is that we are close. I and my combat, the person I'm fighting, we are close. Like, it is quaint. It is sort of an intimate thing in its own way. And we are killing each other. People are dying. But that's part of what you accept at the same time. I don't know. Any other thoughts on quaint war?
Well, it's, I was just looking that up because it, I guess today it's, I think it would kind of be almost a synonym for cute or like cozy, in a lot of circumstances. What's up, Nate?
I was just nodding along.
Yeah, and I just looked this up, and it's also probably something. Well, words shift meaning over time. That's how language works. So I'm double checking, and one of the definitions here, unusual or different in character, appearance, odd. Like it's just
Okay.
It's kind of odd. It's kind of weird how these things turn out. It's kind of a little oddity, and it's yeah. I think that fits the kind of mood. It's like, yeah, when you stop and think about it, it's a little weird how these things go. And yeah, it's and like Nate said, like after World War One, after World War Two, you know at some point English and German soldiers who may have been in the same battles would cross paths and you know be on often be on relatively friendly terms. Um, may have even shot at each other once or twice, but it's like, I don't know. I was doing what I was supposed to do. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Okay. Glad you didn't kill me.
And yet that may not have always been the case, as well. Somebody, holding a grudge after the war and wants to kill any American they can see, or vice versa. Um,
I am sure there are those out there as well. Yeah. And I it's an understandable attitude. Like I see how you could get to there. So yeah. What was
That's the thing about that's the thing about professional war. Like trained soldiers, uniformed combatants. It's not personal. It's not like I hate that guy, because it's just like, oh, okay, he's a problem. Got to get rid of him. Got to take him and that place he is at is all just a whole bundle of issues, and we're going to resolve it with high explosives. But you walk up to him sleeping, you're not going to be like, I'm going to slit his throat. You're going to be like, hey, wake up, Fritz. You're a prisoner now. It's like, again, it's like, sucks to be you, I guess, but hey, all right. Yep, come on. Come back to the camp.
I'm sorry, this
A couple different instances from Band of Brothers really kind of pop out to me here. There's one where they show a kid. I think he's a replacement, and they get in this firefight. And he's sitting there like down in his foxhole, like just holding his rifle, like, oh no no. Well, the captain walks up to him and he's like, "Get up!" He's like, he's like, "Get up!" So he gets him standing, and there's Germans over there, and he's like, "Aim your rifle, soldier!" And the kid's like, he's like hesitating, and he's like, "Fired!" He's like, "You fire your weapon, soldier!" He's like, "I got it." He's like, "Fire!" So the guy just picks out a random German, and I mean, boop, smokes him. And after that, he's good to go. He's a hardcore soldier, and so like they go over there, and like he actually goes and finds the guy that he shot, and he's wearing an Edelweiss flower on his vest and one on his harness, and they're like, "Oh yeah." One of the guys is walking by, and he's like, "Huh, okay." And so the kid's like, what's going on with the flower?" He's like, "That's an Edelweiss. It grows on the top of mountains. It's a sort of a thing the German soldiers do, that they'll climb the mountain and go get that flower to show that they're tough. They are a hardened soldier." And so the kid takes it and puts it on his harness, and he wears it, through the rest of his fighting, because, he's like, well, again, nothing personal, dude, but I beat you. I survived my encounter with you, and you didn't survive your encounter with me. And it's kind of like, yeah, but it's not like, I'm going to spit on your face kind of thing. It's just okay, this is the thing that happened. And then there's like another time where, from the same thing, where the captain is like, he's shaving. He's just back there in his command post, and he's kind of shaving, getting ready for the day. And he looks over, and there's this German soldier walking into the CP. And he's like, grabs his rifle and he's like, "Hey, come over here." And the German's like, "Oh, that's an American talking." And so they disarm him and take his stuff, but they're not like beating him up or hurting him or anything. It was just like, well, that was interesting. He got lost in the fog and rolled right up on our command post. Just random German running in here. And so, like I said, it's business. It's like, this is just a thing that's going to happen. You're some guys over there that are shooting. Got to get you out of the way somehow. If you live, all right. If you die, okay. Just as long as we can get the objective. Doesn't have to be about hatred or bloodlust all the time. It's just, unless you're a Marine.
Yeah, but I think Band of Brothers also shows circumstances where the men do get to that sort of a feeling because it becomes personal. They're in the woods at one point, and two of the favorite members, have lost their legs and have been taken away. I forget which one it was. He was just kind of ready to kill in a more personal way after that, and I think that's realistic and to be expected as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's never going to be just like I said, it can't be impersonal for everybody all the time.
Right.
And like a lot of times there's like, you'll read about it and there'll be like, I hated them. Like, it's like I hated their uniform, I hated their nation and all of that. But once they meet, and actually have to interact one-on-one in like, a peaceful setting with these people, they're like, it's like all that hatred I had, for his uniform and his flag, now I see this man, I'm just like, well, hard to hate. It's hard to hate Hans here. I can hate the Wehrmacht, I can hate Nazi Germany, I can hate the Soviets or the Kong or whatever. But once I'm running into another person, and it's like, you have a face. From a couple hundred yards, you're a gray shape or whatever that I'm going to crank off some 30 caliber rounds at. But now that I'm looking at you and we're not trying to kill each other, you're a person. And we can meet on that ground.
Well, and I think a large part of what is hated in war is the suffering being inflicted upon you. It's the barrage of firepower and explosions and cold and hunger, and you're blaming the enemy for all of this, but it is sort of the enemy at large, like even more so than a uniform or a flag. I think it's just I don't want to be here doing this, and you're the reason I'm doing this.
Well, this also a little bit reminds me of do I have it up here? C.S. Lewis's book Paralandra, which is one of my favorite books of his. I'm not going to say it's the absolute favorite. I don't know if I could rank them that easily, but yeah, at one point, the main character is coming into conflict, coming into like direct physical conflict, like in an actual more or less fist fight with a man possessed by a man possessed by the devil, and he's like, and he realizes like, wow, so I'm like I'm fighting this creature whose will is absolutely evil, and like I can hate him absolutely, and I don't have like he said something effective like a soldier on a battlefield can fire at the enemy, can be angry at the enemy, can hate him, but you always have to hold back a little bit because it's another person, it's another human being made in the image of God, but like I don't have to hold back. I can hate absolutely and without restraint because this is what hate was made for. And it's like, huh, yeah. Um,
Also,
so
he's like, huh, Satan just punched me in the face, and he kind of sucks. Whack, 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 whack.
yes, if
But
you haven't read that, I do very much recommend that book.
well, gentlemen, if I
It's
suddenly disappear, it's because my phone died. It just threw up the "Hey, I'm about to die" symbol.
okay. Well, in that case, I guess we could wrap up for tonight. Um, since you're the one whose phone is about to disappear at any moment, Nate, do you have any last thoughts on the poem tonight?
As in war, so in the rest of life. Whenever you come into conflict with a person, remember to take a moment and realize that they're a person. And chances are their reasons to them are just as good as your reasons to you, is why you're in conflict with them. And so rather than setting forth solely to destroy them, I do believe in trying to understand. Now, if once you understand you find them reprehensible, destroy them. But that's it. You're first understand, then judge.
That actually reminds me a little bit of Ender's Game, which is another talk to get into. Travis, how about you? Any last thoughts for tonight?
The thought that was coming to my mind even before Nate spoke there was, respect for your enemy. They may be your enemy, but just like you were talking, when you take a prisoner, you treat them right. That sort of thing. Um, you you can acknowledge that this is a fight that I have to be in. I've chosen my side. I may not like it. I may not like all of it. But you can still maintain a respect for the enemy and understanding that they are human and that, yeah, you'd probably buy them a beer if you ran into them in another circumstance.
Okay. Well, thank you both for getting together with us tonight, and God be with you. And I think Nate may have actually disappeared because he's just frozen.
I believe so.
All right. Good night, guys.